Clarissa here. We are back. We are in the limelight. And yet again, I have another extraordinary guest for you today. But before I bring him on, I want to remind you also that you're going to be able to listen to the show on all these lovely different podcast platforms that you see below. There are about 15 of them. So no excuse not to find the show. We will be on YouTube as well. I want to let you all know also that the new magazine is out, In the Limelight with Clarissa. The summer edition is out, and you can find that over at clarissaburt.com/magazine. What else have we got for you guys today? I think that's really about it. As far as the setup is concerned, I'm really thrilled though to have this gentleman on. I want to get a nice background in here because I forgot the background, but I do want to have a really nice conversation about the importance of, self-esteem and personal growth and all of the things that we do for ourselves that help get us out of excruciating pain at times. So I'm going to have him come on now. There he is. There's Ryan Kopyar. Hey, Ryan, so good to see you. You are the men's vulnerability coach, and I love that. Pre-show, I kind of told you why the cover of my book is blue. And that is because, again, I know that personal development, self-esteem, self-improvement, it doesn't discriminate, it's kind of straight across the board. Love the work that you're doing. And that's why I wanted to have you on. So let's dive right into that. You talk about not only vulnerability, we're going to get into that, but while you're at it, let's talk about what emotional flexibility is and why should people care?
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be with you, Clarissa. Thank you so much. That intro had me pumped up. I like the music that you have there. So I'm rocking and rolling. Yeah, rocking and rolling and ready to go. Yes, so it's very hard when we're standing on our tippy toes to be firm and to be grounded. And so emotional flexibility is staying grounded. It's recognizing that we're not always going to be perfect. We're going to have those times where we're going to drop the ball. As men, there's often a lot of pressure on us to be able to, perform at a very high level, particularly as it relates to providing for family members and those that we love and care about. And so emotional flexibility helps to kind of take some of that pressure off us to be able to communicate with those that we love and say, hey, you know what, I'm struggling, or hey, maybe I dropped the ball, or I said this and I'm not really so proud of the way that it came out, and to be able to be open to not only communicate it, but to then receive that feedback from your partner or your lover.
Yeah, I think an apology and I'm sorry sometimes just goes a really, really long way. And it doesn't, there's no blame, no shame, no guilt. It just is what it is. And it really does kind of go a long way. It makes you feel better. The person in front of you feels a lot better too. And so why not? I think that that's a really important message. The power of vulnerability, however, and I know that for guys, this is a huge one. I can get on a plane, Ryan, as you know, women are different, right? We get on a plane in LA, and by the time I'm in New York, I got a new best friend. If I got a woman sitting next, I know everything about her ADHD. I know everything about her PTSD. Like we're best buds by the time we hit New York. Guys don't track that way. And I want to know from you, because I know you're working with, hundreds, if not thousands of men, and you have for a while now. What is it where's that glitch in the matrix, in the male matrix that goes, or is it prior education? Is it what they learned from the familial tribe?
Yes, I think it's spot on to that last point that you just made there. So I frame it like this. For any of the men out there listening, did you ever have your grandfather or your father or a male caretaker ever sit you down and say, oh my gosh, Johnny, I just had the best cry, and let me tell you all about it, and let me tell you what I was able to uncover about myself.
Yeah, right.
My papa cried, and I watched him cry a few times, but for most men, we never had that demonstration of what it was like to be vulnerable, or to even believe that it was okay to be vulnerable. So I think a lot of it comes from what's passed down from those before us to be that tough, stoic man.
Right. So, I think that obviously then, you decided that I know you have a first book that came out, which was Unlock the Power of Your Mind, but you wrote a second book and it's called Big Boys Do Cry.
That's right. Yes. And it's pictured on the screen there now. So yeah, Big Boys Do Cry. This was a book that I wrote in about 60 to 75 days with the help of my editor. It really just poured out of me. So much of the work that I do with men in the one-on-one space that I do as a counselor, it was like, okay, all these men are coming to me with the same major core issues. There was trauma, and that trauma then limited or inhibited their ability to be able to communicate in a healthy and effective way. They could be vulnerable with me because I was another man that helped to show them how to hold that space,
Right.
but struggled to be vulnerable with those that they loved. And so that's why I wrote the book as a blueprint to help men understand how to be vulnerable and how to create those safe relationships. That's so important for women. They need to feel safe, and vulnerability is that pathway for men.
Right. And apart from the safety aspect that you talk about, you also talk about, the connection part of that. It really does help you to connect to not only to, I believe, a part of yourself, but again, to anyone else in your life that, you might be wanting to be vulnerable with, right?
That's right. Yeah. So vulnerability creates safety. Through safety, we're able to have communication, real communication, meaningful communication, not just surface level communication. Through communication comes deeper levels of connection. And through deeper levels of connection comes deeper levels of love. So it all starts with vulnerability, and then we ping pong back and forth to get to what it is I believe we're all hardwired to want as human beings, which is to be loved.
Right. And you yourself, when first, I'm looking at the first page, your homepage of the website, you said, when I gave myself permission to cry, my life changed. How did your life change, Ryan?
There was a lot of trauma that was stored inside of me that I had been carrying around since the death of my mother and my unborn sister, which I talk about in Unlock the Power of Your Mind. And I didn't realize it, Clarissa. I didn't realize that I was holding on to all that pain. And we all have pain in our life, and most of us were never taught how to process and to release and to transmute that pain. When I worked with my counselor, Billy, and through the counseling process really opened up and gave myself permission to cry, it was like this tremendous weight was lifted off my shoulder. And I see that in the work that I do with men and women. But when we give ourselves permission to cry, we drop out of our head into our heart, and then we get to release that trauma that I believe gets stored inside of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, is it one of those kind of things where, and and I'm curious really more from the men's side. And I really think that your book, Big Boys Do Cry, is just as important for men to read it as it is for women. Because I think that, women don't understand men a lot, and vice versa. And we really need to find that point of connection, as you talked about before, where we can come together and say, oh, now I've read this book and I get you now. I kind of understand. Yes. We're all wired differently, but men and women certainly are wired quite differently. And so is it easier for men to cry with a friend, cry with a coach, cry alone? Like, where's their sweet spot usually?
Yeah, so there's interesting research coming out of Penn State that says men are slowly, and we're working in a big way to crush the narrative, and that's why I wrote the book, but sure, we're starting to break the narrative where men are feeling that it's okay to cry in what would be defined as masculine situations. So sports, or maybe, at the firehouse or with some of their other guys. Yeah. In that environment, they're starting to feel more okay to cry. That's great, but now they're crying with their peers and being vulnerable with their peers. But where it really counts is within the family unit. Yeah. And with their wives, with their partners, and with their kids, right? And so, yes, it's happening, in that context, but there's still more work for us men to do to translate it into the other more feminine or familial aspects.
Absolutely. Last year, the Attorney General of the United States, Vivek Murthy, came out and said that we have a youth mental health crisis. I know that we are also experiencing now a loneliness epidemic. Along with that, and apart from our military, which, the famous 22 a day number, which is tragic, we're apparently now, we have more men that think that it's either unaliving, committing suicide, or otherwise the author of your demise are committing suicide. What is it that you would want to say to any man that feels as though, he needs help, he needs assistance, he needs something that he's not understanding right now in his life?
That I love you, and I care about you, and there are people out there that care about you and love you, that there is absolutely no pressure to seek out help. There's no pressure to seek out help. It took me 3 decades to really re-engage in counseling at a level where I was really open to make a change. So There's no pressure, right? When we pressure people, it often has the counter response, right? So no pressure. But here's a vulnerable guy. Here's a big alpha male guy, right? And I'm telling you, I cry. I'm telling you, I do counseling still to this day, right? Yeah. and my life is better and my relationships are better. And when I release the pain inside, life just got more magical. So I never tell somebody what to do, right? But I can tell them that whatever that pain is that they're holding inside, it's possible to live life in another way where you don't have to hold that pain inside. Oh, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall at one of your coaching sessions. Or I know that you also, you do an experience, right? So there's a vulnerability coaching that you go through. I believe it's 8 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And I'd love for you to take a deeper dive into that. Like, what can guys really expect? I mean, again, I'm really going to assume it's kind of a scary space for guys to step into. Yeah, you're an alpha guy, and yeah, it's an easier, but I'm going to go with, there's got to be some trepidation, right?
Sure. Yeah. I think that's normal. That's a part of the counseling process. That's a part of when you're working with a coach. And hey, you know what? Good. We've got to get a little bit uncomfortable. If we're not uncomfortable, we're not going to grow, right? So yes, there is some level of discomfort that comes involved with counseling or doing coaching or being a part of my 8-week program. But I'll say this, when you get into a room of people and you know that you're not alone, and when you can feel seen and heard in a sense of community, which, by the way, women are really, really good at doing that, especially in the online space. They're so good at doing it. Us men got to step up to the plate and create that environment too, because it's great for us to have as well. Right.
So expect a lot of other people in the room. They're going, on Zoom. Wow. I think you do virtual, don't you?
Yes. So it's all virtual, but I keep it small, 8 to 10 people, 10 people max, because if it gets too much outside of there, it's a lot of emotions to have in one virtual room. But yeah, in the 8-week program, you get around other men, right, that are very much just like you, and maybe in some ways different. But here's what I've come to realize. Although our experiences may be different, and although that the pain may come from different places, there's a strong overlap because we're all human beings, right? And so that pain that maybe you feel is isolating you, or is something that, is just so far out that nobody else has experienced. I promise you, you're not alone. And there's other people out there that also have that pain, that also want to heal. And when we come together in an environment, it's a great way to do that.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times, apart from the pain that we're feeling, I think maybe there are even some things that maybe we're not so proud of that have happened in our lives or that we've done. Right. And that that's stuck, but you don't know who to talk to about it. And so I really think that this is a perfect place, Ryan. I love the work that you're doing. I really think this is awesome because, as you say, even here in your course, it really is life-changing transformation. And I love what you're also saying here. It's like, vulnerability mastery, like you can master being vulnerable, right? That is so cool. I've never seen it put quite that way before, but that is the cool. Come master vulnerability, open yourself up. And like you said, when I opened myself up and I allowed myself to cry and I was doing all this growth, life became magical. Tell me a couple of the ways that it became magical for you, apart from writing a couple of books about it and obviously in coaching then to their transformation and to their growth. What's happened for you?
That's a great question. We could have a whole episode just on answering that question. I'll say this. When we are vulnerable, we create a meeting ground for other people to be vulnerable with us and to connect with us in a real way. I think we live in a world, I think we're starting to shift out of it, but we live in a world where so many people want to live in their highlight reel and they want to show everybody the best part of themselves. Yeah. When we're vulnerable, with whoever that may be, like, Clarissa, there's times where I'm at the supermarket talking to somebody and the conversation goes deep quick and it's like, wow, how did we get there? But there's such a connection that gets built, right? So when we're vulnerable, or for me, when I've started to live my life becoming more vulnerable, I created much deeper levels of connection with people, and I was able to serve people at a deeper level. So when someone comes to me and says, hey, I read your book and it helped me in this way, whatever that may be, personally, professionally, like, that's what I believe that God put me on this earth to do. And it lights up my heart because I know that I'm really helping people and creating connections at a deeper level. So that's kind of a broad answer to a question that you asked.
I say, it kind of floats my boat when I get somebody that says, I read your book, and I like to call it, changing lives one chapter at a time. And it really does. It really, it's like, I think that's one of the main reasons I am here. If I can take a little bit, I don't know if you can remember, but back in the day, Ryan, we had 3 bookstores. That was our internet, right? There were no internet, right? And so if you were in pain, there really wasn't a lot of places that you could go and speak to. First of all, back in my day, you didn't talk about anything. Like nothing got talked about, right? It just wasn't done. And so we had Border Books, Walden Books, and Barnes and Noble, right?
Yes.
And there was a little teeny section in the back, and it was called self-help. And maybe there were 40 to 50 books on there. I mean, maybe there were 40, to 50 books on there. Now, the personal development section in Barnes and Noble is rows upon rows upon rows upon rows of $1 billion industry. And so it just goes to show that we are always looking for solace, assistance, guidance, help, the reason why, a way out, or whatever else. And so to your point, I just really want to, congratulate you again for the work, stepping up for men, because I don't think that there are a whole lot of people that do. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to show your book again. Big Boys Don't Cry. Ryan is the author of this book. Ryan, what say you? I mean, I think that there needs to be more attention, especially in this time, and especially with the statistics that we're hearing toward men.
Yeah, well, that's why I wrote the book. So I'm a little bit biased probably, but I'm in agreement with you 100%. It's interesting because men do not seek out counseling to the same degree that women do, right? So although statistically women have been diagnosed at a higher level with a mental health disorder, right, that's not really an apples to apples comparison, because so many more women are engaging in counseling than men. Yes. And so again, to all of the men out there, I just want to let you know that it's okay to reach for help. It's okay to ask for help. There are people out there, that it doesn't have to be so traditional, like how people think of counseling, right? Like it's going to be this stuffy environment and I'm going to sit down from somebody and, very white coat. Like I say to people, I'm a human being just like you. I don't promise to have all the answers figured out. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, right? So I promise you, there's some counselors out there, men or women, but there's some counselors out there that will make you feel comfortable. And if you decide to embark on the journey, it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Great. Well, tell everybody how they can find you, where they can get the book. And then I have one last question for you.
Okay. Yeah. So you could grab the book either on my website, www.ryankopyar, Kopyar, holistichealing.com, or on Amazon.
Right. Okay, great. Here's the last question that I love to ask. And I forgot to turn that darn ticker off. God forgive me. I'm sorry. Boom, done. I need to know what in your opinion, in your lifetime, has been your crowning moment.
I think that for me, I remember exactly where I was. I had just finished up my last class for my master's program. And I remember sitting down in my master's program for my counseling. And I remember sitting down on the couch and just bawling deep sadness, crying. And I'm a man of faith. I call my higher power God. I honor the fact that people may call their higher power by different names if they have one. Sure. And I remember just feeling like this is what it was all about, was getting all of the pain, the death of my mother and my sister, getting arrested, my struggle with drugs and alcohol, my marriage falling apart at the last minute, right? All of these things, all of that pain, it all led me to that moment where now I can take my pain and use it to serve and to help others. And I'll never forget that moment, Clarissa. I was like, so this is what it was all about to bring me to this point. Yeah.
Light bulb moment. Last chance, everybody, just to take a look at the book, Big Boys Do Cry. We've been talking to Ryan Kopyar, the author of the book, an extraordinary man, helping men navigate this thing we call life, Ryan.
Yes. Thank you so much, Clarissa. Great conversation.
Thank you. Same to hear. Stay right there while I say goodbye to everybody, if you don't mind. Oh, Ryan, it's my first time back in a minute, so I'm going to say goodbye to everybody in this way. Thanks for listening to this episode of the In the Limelight podcast, intelligent media for the savvy entrepreneur. You can listen to this and all of my podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and Inspired News Radio. You'll find all of my videos and the In the Limelight digital magazine on clarissaburt.com. And don't forget to connect with me on social pretty much anywhere. Stay well until we meet again. In the Limelight.